Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing some really pretty and unique DIYs. I found this bookend at my local thrift store, and since there was only one, I decided to just break this up into two different pieces and create two bookends. So I'm going to be doing one of my favorite little techniques on here, which is a textured stencil, and I'm using this little floral stencil, which as you notice, it doesn't reach all the way across, so I will have to match this up. But I'm using some Dollar Tree spackling, and I'm just spraying a little bit of water down in there to turn this into a paste. And then I'm using a little spatula and just rubbing that paste all over my stencil. And once I was done, it just leaves this beautiful raised textured stencil on here. Then you can go around and just wipe off any of the excess on the edges. Now I went ahead and did the second one and then let both of these completely dry before matching up the stencil in that little area that it didn't reach. Once they were both completely dry, then I'm grabbing some air dry clay and I'm gonna roll this out because I want to make little vase pockets for these bookends. So I'm just gonna roll that clay out and make sure that it fits across each of the bookends. Once I had it rolled out, then I just kind of lined it up with the bookends, and then I'm going to use a ruler to cut this down into a little rectangle. And I just use my finger to kind of smooth out all of those edges. To create the little pocket, I'm just using a piece of a grocery bag, and I'm going to lay my piece of clay right over that and just center the little piece of the grocery bag with the bookend, and then I will just start kind of pressing this clay down to make that vase part. Once it is exactly how I wanted it, then I just used some gel super glue and glued down the sides and the bottom of this piece of clay. I let both of those dry overnight and then was able to just remove the little piece of grocery bag. I'm going to go in with some white chalk paint, but I'm not going to completely cover these. I actually really liked the wood tone and some of that showing through. So I'm just kind of sporadically painting over the wood part, and then I will cover the clay pieces with that white chalk paint. And then to complete these, I just added in some dried flowers. This project is inspired by some frames that I saw at an antique store. These are pictures I found on Pinterest that are similar to the vibe I'm going for, where the matting for the picture frame is the star of the show. Now, obviously you can do this with any picture frame you want to, but I was lucky enough to find one of these Victorian jewelry boxes at my local thrift store. So I did end up having to do a lot of reconstructing on this box. Once I started trying to take the picture glass out of it and the glass backing mirror part of this, the box just kind of started falling apart. And again, this is probably really old. It is from the Victorian period, so it was totally expected that this might be a little wonky, and it was only held together with some nails. So as you can see, I just went in with some wood glue and used a little bit of hot glue just to hold it together for the wood glue to dry. You may have noticed this wood piece that was in the box before, but I don't need another jewelry box, so I actually want to hang this on the wall in my bedroom above my nightstand. So I decided to turn this into a little pocket and just cut that wood piece down and then use some some wood glue to glue it to the front side. And then when this is hanging on the wall, I could use this to put the book that I'm reading or something like that inside of here. I also ended up replacing the back portion of this frame with a little bit of thin basswood. It's really easy to cut down to the size you need, and then to kind of try to get this to match the wood tone, I just used some Waverly antiquing wax. Finally, with my box put all back together, it was time to move on to that matting, and I'm actually just using some thin chipboard that I got from Amazon to make this matting, and a 4x6 little piece of paper that came out of one of my frames. I just used that piece of paper, traced around it, and then used an X-Acto knife to cut that out. I ended up painting my matting with some Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, but this wasn't really necessary. I just wasn't sure if my paper was thick enough to not show through, so I did go ahead and just paint it. But this is the scrapbook paper that I'm going to be using to cover my matting. It is a vintage floral design, and again, it was definitely thick enough that I didn't need to paint it. But if you're using a thinner paper to cover it, you definitely do want to paint your matting. I cut my scrapbook paper down to size, and then to attach it to the matting, I'm just using a glue stick to do this, and I started out just by doing the top and then working my way to the bottom. Once I've attached it to the matting, then again, I'm just going to use an X-Acto knife and cut that center piece out. Then to attach it to the frame, I just used my staple gun and added some staples to the back side. To dress the matting up even more, I'm going to be using this little decorative wood piece that I got from Amazon. And again, just to try to match the color of the frame a little bit, I am using some Waverly antiquing wax, just using a small brush, getting it on there, and then wiping off the excess. I used some gel super glue to attach this to the matting, and I did leave a little bit of that wood piece kind of hanging over the center oval part. This antique perpetual calendar was going for over $1,000, but I knew I could make something similar inspired by this. I'm going to be using a lot of wood pieces that I already had on hand. These are just two little scrap pieces of 1x2s that I cut down to the same size, and then these little wood plaques are actually just from Dollar Tree. And of course, it's good that I always save pretty much everything, so I had these wood spools left over from all the velvet ribbon that I used for Christmas. To get a similar look of the inspiration, I am using some antiquing wax to get that nice rich wood color, and I'm just painting this on, and I'm gonna let this sit for a little bit before wiping it off. And I'm gonna do this to all of my pieces, including the wood spools, and I also grabbed some Dollar Tree little 1/4-inch dowels that I'll be using and also stain those as well. So mine is gonna be just a little different than the inspiration, and since I'm going to be using some wood spools, I decided to linen wrap those, and then I'm just going to use these stamps that I got from Amazon, and I'm going to do the days and the days of the weeks and the months on here. I roughly measured out a piece of linen drop cloth and then cut this down to fit around those spools. Since the numbers are much bigger than the days of the week and the month stamps that I have, I'm going to start out by doing the 31 numbers first. And you may notice that I left quite a bit of a gap up at the top, and I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom for this. So So I'll cut that piece off and then I will start doing the months. And for all of these pieces, I'm keeping everything really close together. And as you can see, by doing that, it makes it fit perfectly around this spool. Now I'm going to continue on to the days of the week. And for this one, I did leave just a little bit more space in between. Then I'm just using some hot glue to attach these to the spool, starting at the top and then just wrapping these around and hot gluing it again. Then I'll just do the exact same to that second one. Now, since the numbers are a little bit bigger, I am using 2 spools for this part. And as you can see, I've already drilled the holes where my wood dowels are going to go to hold these spools up, but I have not cut down my dowels just yet. I am going to dry fit these onto the little wood pieces, and then I can attach the number pieces to those 2 spools. This way I know exactly where they're going to be spaced out and how tightly to keep these. And this is why I left a little bit extra fabric at the top and at the bottom. So once I've attached the top piece to the spool, then you see I can kind of just roll this up and I'm able to attach the bottom part. Then I went ahead and cut down those dowels and put everything back together. To put this together, I am just using some wood glue on the bottom of those 2 wood pieces, and then I will stand it up on the little Dollar Tree plaque. And for that top piece, I just added a little bit of wood glue to the top and let that dry. Just be careful that you don't get any glue on those spools because you want them to be able to turn. I also decided that I wanted to cover up the dowels a little bit and make them look nicer. So I'm using some dark wood beads to cover those. I also decided that I really wanted something to point to the date. So I drilled tiny little nail holes in the front of this, and I'm going to be using these little paper brads. Now I have split the little part open. One part is actually going to go down into these little holes with some gel super glue, and then the other part of the paper brad is what's going to be used to point at the date. And then finally, to finish this off, I just wanted to add this cute little vintage handle to the top. Recently, I saw these French bouillotte lamps on someone's Instagram. These are antique, vintage, and they are super expensive. So I decided to create my own. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but either way, I had to have one. So I headed to my local thrift store in the search for a candelabra and a lampshade to create this lamp. And I was actually able to pick this one up for just $2.99. As for the lampshade for this, I actually still have not been able to find one that I really loved. So I just used this frame and recovered this one for now. I don't know that this will stay permanently on this or not. If I find a different one that I like more, then I will definitely just switch it out. I needed a way to make the actual lamp part of this, so I'm using one of these chunky dowels. I actually got this from Walmart, and I cut it down to the size that I wanted for my lampshade. I also needed a way for my lampshade to attach to this dowel, and as you can see, the hole is much bigger than the dowel, so I'm just using these 2 little scrap pieces of wood. I'm pretty sure these came off of something from the Target dollar spot, but they fit this perfectly, and I'm able to sandwich the little ring from the lampshade and then screw it into my dowel. And as you can see, I've already pre-drilled all of my holes. I ended up painting all of my wood pieces with some black chalk paint, but of course you can choose any color you want. And these lamps, if you look them up, they come in different colors and styles of all types. Once everything was dry, then I'm going to use some gel super glue in that center little candle holder, and I'm just squeezing quite a bit in there so that I can put this dowel down inside of that one. Moving back to that lampshade, I did decide to remove the cover and redo it, but as you can see, I did glue one of those little wood pieces to the bottom part of the frame. Then I'll be able to just pop this other one right on top of there and screw this down later. I saw on Pinterest a lampshade that was just covered in ribbon to be made to look like a pleated lampshade. So I happen to have this white kind of ribbed ribbon on hand, and I'm just going to take one piece and figure out how long I need each of my pieces, and then I'm just going to cut down a whole bunch of these pieces. After I cut down all my pieces, then I'm just using some Gorilla hot glue sticks, and I'm going to start at the top and kind of wrap it around just a little bit and glue it together. Then I'll go down to the bottom and pleat these little ribbons over top of each other. It was really simple to do and honestly didn't take as long as I thought it would, but I just kept working my way all the way around this lampshade, doing the little ribbons in a pleated style. Just make sure you're putting your ribbon a little closer together at the top than at the bottom. And this is how it looked whenever I finished. And that was really it to create this lamp. Now to light it up, I am just using some little puck lights that I got from Amazon. And this, I'm just going to remove the little piece that would screw down into the light socket so that I can make this back piece flat. And then once I remove that, I will just pop this down into the top of the lampshade. And of course, I wanted to add some LED candles down into those other candle cups. These are just ones that I got off of Amazon. And then, like I said, I just had to screw the lampshade down on top of there. And that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.